Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Just waiting for this to all finish loading up nicely. Ah, beautiful. So let's get kicked off. Hello there, everyone. It's Richard Van Ommen here from the Katana Group. Awesome to have you guys on. This is the Katana Property Channel, and this is episode number 3. And this is going to be a very, very exciting session. I'm genuinely very excited to be spending a bit of time with you guys this evening. We're going to be covering some pretty cool stuff. So firstly, I wanted to say thank you very much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be covering a little bit on money mindset. Okay, that's our core subject of today, which is money mindset. And basically, the 3 reasons why you don't have as much money in your bank as you want. Nice and simple. We're going to be covering that at length today, which should be a very, very exciting session. So just want to sort of check in. Hey, John, awesome to have you on the chat. Very cool for you guys to be in. I'm glad it works. So makes it a bit simpler. At least I know the chat's busy working, which is very cool. So thank you. For anybody else, if you've got any questions throughout, please just ask. Okay, nice and simple. The whole purpose of me running this channel is so that I can spend a bit of time with you, getting to know you. Hopefully you get a bit of time where you get to know me. I can offer you some free education, some free mentorship, and sort of help you move along on your property journey and take those steps, especially with all of this corona stuff happening in the background, enable you to keep moving, keep going, and essentially not be put off from your investment dreams and ventures because of some pandemic that's kicking off. And also to be able to help instill the safe knowledge that what you're doing, providing you're moving forward, is always fine. It's always good. So it should be a very exciting session joining you today. So should be very good. Right, okay, so as I said, there's 3 reasons why you don't have as much money in your bank as you want, and they're all down to sort of mindset and money beliefs. Just by the way, I'll look down here because we get comments in, so my computer is, so I get comments in from people either on the Facebook Live or YouTube Live. So yes, so please feel free to ask any questions you have. I'll make sure I answer them, whether that's on YouTube or on Facebook. Okay, so the 3 reasons why you don't have as much money in your bank as you want. Reason number 1 is very simply, it's an internal belief. It's a belief all around your value, right? And it's a belief around your value of yourself or your self-worth or something along those lines. Now, this may or may not be you, and that's okay if it's not. If you soul search, you may find it is, who knows, okay? But that is the first one. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down into these in just a minute so you can understand what they are and how they work. Right, the second one is either a fear or a disrespect of money. So this tends to be one of the big ones. Either you have a fear of money or you have a genuine disrespect, you don't like it, you have disgust of it or something along those lines. Just by the way, if any of these are you, please feel free to drop it into the chat box, just so I know that is you. Okay, nice and simple. Okay, let me just move this window quickly, just because it is right in the way of the chat. Oh, well then, Facebook. Stay on this page. Okay, cool. Right. So yeah. So reason number 2 is a fear or disrespect of money. Now you often hear people say, "Yeah, but I don't care about the money," or "It's not about the money," or "I don't even want the money," or I don't need money. That's one of my favorite ones. I don't need money. So this is another common one. And if any of these resonate, just please pop it in the chat box, because I want to make sure that this is in sync with where you're at and what you actually believe and what you feel, to make sure you get the most value out of this. I don't want you to be listening to me rambling on and it doesn't make sense. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, and then number 3, the third reason why you don't have as much money in your bank as you really want to have is often an imprinted belief. Okay, it's an imprinted belief. And what do I mean by this? Okay, what I mean by this is a belief that you carry from one of your parents, all right, or one of your guardians, somebody who looked after you when you were young. And this comes down to where beliefs are made, the psychology behind it, and all that kind of good stuff, which we're going to break down in a minute. Okay, but let's start off with the internal belief of value. Okay, the internal belief of value or self-worth. Let's get kicked off with that. So what I often find is, and you'll notice that all 3 of these are kind of intertwined and interlinked in many ways, because it all talks about the same subject, by the way. But what I tend to find with people is, you may find that, let me think of how best to describe this. So when it comes to money in the bank, you have a set point. Okay, you have a certain amount of money in the bank that you just feel comfortable with. Okay, and that's it. Like it's just what it is, and you'll know what it is. The sort of amount of money you often have in the bank is a general rule of thumb. Now, for some people, it's nothing. For some people, it's negative. For some people, it's like a couple of thousand. For some people, it's several thousand. For some people, it's tens of thousands. For some people, it's hundreds of thousands. It all depends. So we all have a variance on what that is. And it's interesting because what you'll find is you'll become accustomed to a certain amount of money in your bank. And interestingly enough, whenever the amount of money you have in your bank drops a fair amount below that, you'll get very uncomfortable and you will do whatever you need to do. So either that's working extra hours, becoming much more thrifty or scrupulous with your funds. Like there's a whole array of things that you can do at this point, which then puts you in a position that you bring your money back up to the level that you're expecting. Okay, or vice versa. And this is the one that catches people out. And this is the one where I talk about as self-worth or self-value, is where people end up having more money in their bank. So you might find that one day you had more money in your bank for whatever reason, either you won on a scratch card or you inherited some money or you got a tax rebate or something. And instinctively, the vast majority of people, when the money in their bank goes up higher than what they normally deem as their set point, they tend to spend. And you may have found, if this was the situation for you, you may have found that you used this money or spent this money because you had other things that you wanted to spend it on. Either you needed that family holiday, or you had to get that thing fixed, or you had to buy this thing for the house or for the car, or whatever it is, which would have brought you back down to the level that you're typically comfortable with. Now, how this ties in with your personal belief or your belief of self-worth is, why is it that you only feel comfortable with that certain amount in your bank? Why? I mean, what dictates that that's the amount that you should feel comfortable with? And it's really interesting because typically we try and put away what we feel we need in case things go wrong. Okay, there's a whole psychology behind it. So you put away the amount that you feel you need in case things go wrong in your life, and you go, okay, well, I can figure shit out or figure stuff out if I get to that point. Now, for me, for many, many years, it was like I was negative, but I always knew, like, no matter what happened, I could always figure my way out because I was used to it. That's where I was comfortable. But if I consider for a minute the reality of that, what that basically told me is I didn't value myself and I didn't value money, which is kind of where it gets fascinating. Now, let me give you an example quickly to exemplify this point, and this may or may not apply to you. And let me just check in. Are you guys okay if I give you some 100% straight talk, no bullshit, no fluff? Is that okay with you guys? Just so I want to check it, and just do drop a message in the chat box, either YouTube or Facebook, just so I know. Are you okay if I'm just direct and down the line with you? No fluff and no bullshit. Is that okay? Okay. Yep. Okay. Cool. So the answer is yes. So if you consider for a minute, if you look at, there's a guy you may know. He's fairly famous. Okay. He's American. He's very large. He's got orange skin, yellow hair. He's the president of a country. You may have heard of him, Donald Trump. Interestingly enough, Donald Trump himself, he actually, if you consider many years ago, he had hundreds of millions in the bank. I know now it's billions, but back to when I go to this example, he had hundreds of millions in the bank, okay? And at some point, he personally, obviously many of his businesses he's run down for tax purposes and other reasons, but him personally, at some point, he was on his backside. He'd lost everything. He was done. And he was on the verge of bankruptcy personally. Guess how long it took for him to earn those hundreds of millions of pounds back? And this is the thing that I always find really fascinating. This is the moment. And the answer is 1 year. It took him 1 year. That's all it took him, just 1 year. And think for a second how much you believe that you would earn throughout your lifetime. How much you think you would earn throughout your lifetime? $1 million? A couple million? Few million? 10 million? 50 million? Understand that he did hundreds of millions in 1 year. And how did he manage that? And like, that's the golden question, right? How did he do that? And the answer is actually extremely, extremely simple. Just because that's what he believes he is worth. That is his mental financial set point. That's what he needs to have around him for him to feel, okay, I can relax a little bit, life is comfortable. Whereas for many of us, you might go, well, actually, I'm okay with $1,000 in the bank, or $5,000 in the bank, or 10 grand in the bank, or 50 grand in the bank, then I'm comfortable. Okay, just to give you a bit of an example. Now, think for a second, imagine you could adopt his mindset, his belief around self-worth. Imagine what that would do to your life. effect that would have for you for the rest of your life and for your kids, and etc., etc. Now, my job is to try and help you become aware of where your mental set point is and help you start to adjust that and raise that up and get yourself to a point where your financial set point is higher and therefore your bank balance is higher. Just want to check in. Are you guys okay if I help you increase your bank balance? And of course, the answer is yes, because if it's no, then what are you doing on the stream? Okay, but yes, nice and simple. Now, the second item is either a fear or a disrespect of money. And this often comes, you'll find this typically with artists and creative types. It's a very common, and sorry if you're an artist and you feel offended by this, I promise you it's not to offend you. It's to try and help sort of amend and improve things. So ask yourself if ever you've said to yourself, yeah, but I don't need the money, or it's not about the money, or I don't care about the money. I don't need money, money doesn't do anything for me, or, whatever it is, you've got a whole array of phrases. Now, in your mind, you might go, yeah, but that sounds innocent. That sounds fine. And it's fine for things not to be about the money, but everything kind of should be a little bit about the money, because we don't do things for free. And if you are, so you get two typical people when it comes to money. Okay, two typical sorts. So you've got the greedy, where it's all about the money. Okay, or you've got the selfless, okay, what I call the martyr, where it's never about the money, i.e. give, never take anything for yourself. Now, the greedy, obviously, which is predominantly men, not always, but predominantly men, like to take a lot of money and live like a Scrooge. It's a very common thing, live like a Scrooge. The problem with that is they never really get an opportunity to live, because isn't it a shame to think you've lived a very scrupulous life your entire life, okay? You've never used the money you've been saving. Who gets the money? You haven't enjoyed it. So typically it'll be your kids, and this is where you get second generation wealth loss. Okay, because your kids have been crying after this money their entire lives. They see it as the be all and end all, and then they blow the whole lot. Okay, it's a very, very common trait. Okay, so that's the greedy. And then the other side is the martyr. Now, the martyr will typically give everything to everybody. Like, no, don't worry about the money. I don't need it. It's fine. I don't want it. Okay, and they have a rejection or a fear of money, which is interesting because money is purely an exchange of value. It is an emotionless thing. And it is a way of someone saying, thank you for what you've done. Here is my way of saying thanks, simply. And almost by not accepting the money, you are, although you might feel like you're being nice, what you're doing is you're actually offering an offense, because the person's trying to even the score a little bit and say, thank you for that, have some money. And if you're like, no, I don't want it, essentially what you're trying to do is you are taking or disempowering that person, which is unfair. The other thing you'll notice is people that act as martyrs typically never have money in the bank. Okay, they always lead a life where they go, yeah, but I've got enough. I'm okay. I'll get by. Okay, and it's that I'll get by statement. Now, for me, the thing that I love is what's called conscious capitalism. It's something that's been taught to me by my business coach, a chap called Kane Minkus, him and his wife, Kane and Alessia. They teach conscious capitalism, which is, sure, I'm going to help myself, but I'm helping myself not just to help myself, but to help others. Okay, so it's not all about the money. The money is a nice thing to achieve and get in turn for what I'm doing. So it's not just about the money. Okay, it's about helping others, and by helping others enough, they will then recompense you enough. Okay, that's the deal, right? The more I help you, the more I try and give to you, the more you will feel inclined to want to give to me. And this is how business and life works. And it's how things should work in the world, rather than take. Okay, we all know the salesperson who's all in it for them and never in it for you. Okay, that's not sales, that's manipulation, that's not nice. Okay, whereas if somebody's in it for you, but is willing to take something for them as part of the deal, that is conscious capitalism. Okay, now this is the middle ground that I'd love you to aspire to if you find yourself on either end of the spectrum. Okay, that's the sort of middle ground you want to be at, because that's what's going to be helping other people. And then number 3 was an imprinted belief. Okay, and this is a very interesting one. Andy, awesome to see you on, man. Andy Amori, great to see you guys on. Also, Leslie, awesome to see you on. Thank you very much for joining in. Super cool to have you on. But yeah, so the final mindset thing that holds people back and is preventing you from getting the money in your bank that you want is often an imprinted belief. So this is a belief you carry from your parents. So you guys understand that I think it's something like 70 or so % of your learnings, your mannerisms, the way in which you respond and show up in the world is learned before the age of 3. And then almost the rest of it is learned by the age of 6. So essentially, most of the way in which you respond to pretty much everything in this world is created before the age of 7. Okay, so by the time you hit 7, you've basically you've hugely slowed your emotional growth in terms of how you continue to evolve. Now, you may or may not believe me, and that's absolutely fine. You're within your rights to believe whatever I say or not believe whatever I say, and that's okay. Okay, but if you consider for a second the way that most people turn up, we have a pre-programmed response to how we deal with things. Let me break this back, step this back a little bit. So when you wake up in the morning, do you have to consciously think of breathing? And do you have to consciously think of when you need to scratch your nose or rub your hand, or when you need to sit up, or when you need to move, or when you brush your teeth? Do you have to consciously focus on doing those tasks every single movement, or do they become almost a reactive and responsive movement that you do? Okay, and the answer very simply is this is a learned behavior. It's you create a sequence of events in which your body learns something and then can continually repeat it anytime it's in that situation. Now, if you think in terms of when you're a little child, a lot of how you respond to certain situations, i.e. when you start to learn to walk, when you learn to ride a bike, when you learn to, everything you learn to do that you can now do without having to put conscious effort and thought into, these are all pre-programmed beliefs. It's like a computer running a software in the background. So when you hit yes, play the program, then the program plays. Interestingly enough, those programs also evolve in terms of how you dealt with certain situations. So if you faced rejection, if you faced frustration, if you faced anger, any sort of emotion, how you tended to deal with those before the age of 7 is typically how you continue to deal with them now. You might be a little bit more refined about it, but internally it is the same pattern that is repeating every single time. The more interesting thing is this isn't just about your behaviors in terms of your emotions. This patterning is also the same in terms of whenever you want to spend money, whenever you do anything with savings. So all of these items, however you respond. So as an example, they did a study. So they put out a marshmallow on a plate and they said to the kid, okay, they did this with kids, it's a kid study. No kids got hurt in the study. They said to the kid, if you can wait 5 minutes, not only will you have one marshmallow, I will give you another one. Okay, and something like 80% of the kids couldn't wait the 5 minutes, and they just wolfed down the one marshmallow because they're like, well, if I get a marshmallow now, it's better than, worrying about whether I can get 2 marshmallows later. I want to have it now. Now, this is called instant gratification. Okay, and instant gratification is the same as, when you spontaneously go and buy something, or you decide that you're going to go pop onto Amazon, you go get something, or you stick some money in a fruit machine, or you put money on the bookies, or whatever it is that you buy impulsively, that is instant gratification. Whereas if you save up for something, okay, that is what's called delayed gratification, and you tend to get a lot more value from that. In the same way, people will get a car on finance, or they will get bank loans, or they will get credit cards. That's for instant gratification. Now, in the study, what they learned is those 20% of kids that were able to wait the 5 minutes typically succeeded significantly better in their life, because instead of wanting everything on day one, they were prepared to do a little bit of work now and then wait for the reward, which was much greater in the future, rather than trying to do everything for reward today. And it's interesting because this ties back very beautifully to property, because property, and I want you to write this down if you've got a pen and paper. I hope you have a pen and paper. I'd always urge you to try and get a pen and paper when you're in with any of our sessions, is you want to write down, property is not get rich quick, it is get rich for sure. Okay, that's property is not get rich quick, it is get rich for sure. And what I mean by that is, in terms of how property works, it is a slow burn, right? You're building a long-term wealth plan. Okay, a long-term wealth plan. It's essentially your pension pot with a nice income reward through time. It's not, let me stick a bunch of time in property and that's it, I'm financially free and I'm earning enough money to pay for me and my family in the next 3 to 6 months. It's not how this works. You're talking typically 3 to 5 years for you to be in a good financial footing from building a portfolio correctly. Not always, but the vast majority of the time. Okay, and exactly the same way, how you respond or how you turn up in terms of building your portfolio. If you want instant gratification, what you're going to find is every time you buy a house, go through the process, it's going to feel uninteresting. Okay, and it's going to get to a point where you say, I don't feel like I'm getting enough value from this, so you stop doing it, which defeats the whole point of a long-term wealth plan. Okay, so something to consider is how you look at your responded beliefs. Now, the fascinating thing is if you consider how you tend to turn up in these situations, and you go, okay, so if I'm in a situation, and give yourself an example, let's just say you're in the shop, you popped over to the shop, you wanted to go buy your groceries, and then you saw a CD or a game or something you've always wanted for a very long time, and it's a little bit expensive, but you've always wanted it, and it's the first time you've seen it in a long time. Now ask yourself, do you buy it? Okay. Now, some people will go, yeah, I'm going to buy that because instant gratification, I want it now, I don't mind paying a little bit more. Others will say, actually, you know what, it's not the right price, I'm going to delay, I'm going to wait till I get it for a better price. Okay. Others will go home, check things out, confer, feel comfortable, and then they will come back and buy it. Now, for those of you that sit there and consider things in terms of, well, I mean, if you think about how you'd respond in that situation, that then tells you a little bit about how you turn up in life. Okay, which will also then tell you what you might need to adapt or adjust to continue to improve what you're doing and continue to improve the money that you've got in the bank. In the same way, if you think about how you think about money, and you all have beliefs and thoughts, and please feel free to drop them in the chat boxes, any fears, any concerns, anything you've got around money, but we all have beliefs and fears and thoughts, right? And when it comes to money, there will be thoughts. Now, if somebody says to you, money is, and the first word that pops in your mind, whatever it is, okay, think of that. And then again, so, and yes, and money is also, okay, and do these as an array and always use the first word that pops in your head. And it's really interesting because this starts to highlight a little bit of your genuine beliefs. And what I mean is the first word that pops in your head, not that, money is crap, fun. Okay, so I'm writing down fun. That's not how it works. You want to the immediate thought that pops into your head, that is your genuine instinctive belief, because instinct has the driving seat in your brain. It is significantly faster than logical thinking. Okay, so whatever comes up there, that will be your genuine beliefs around money. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to consider which of your parents has the same belief. Okay, and this is where things start to get really interesting. Which of your parents has exactly the same belief? And then you're going to start to see, actually, well, this is where I've gained my learning and understanding about money. The next question is, does it serve you? Okay, and that's really the $1 million question is, does it serve you? Okay, so what I'd love to do as part of this session, so typically these calls last anywhere between half an hour and an hour, depending if you've got any questions, depending if you want to ask anything, depending if you've got any feedback. If there's no questions, which is absolutely fine, then what we do is we close out and I answer any questions you have in the chat. Or you're always welcome to message me directly. Okay, nice and simple. So what I want to do to sort of help you with the 3 reasons why your bank account isn't looking like you want it to is I'm going to give you guys firstly an exercise, and then I'm going to give you 3 basic steps on what you should do to be able to help you improve your bank balance. Is that okay? Let me just check in with you guys. Is that okay if I do that for you and sort of offer that support and exercise? Just want to check in, because obviously you've got quite a few people on the chat. Just want to check in, make sure everybody's okay with that. It's interesting because Facebook Live has a long delay for messages. Okay, brilliant. So YouTube doesn't seem to have as much of a delay. Hey, Annette, awesome to have you on. Thank you for joining us all the way from Switzerland. I'm curious as to where you're all in the world. Please feel free to post in the chat box where you're all in the world. Brilliant. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, so the very first exercise I want you to do around money is I want you at your earliest convenience. Hey, Pav, awesome to have you on the call, buddy. What I want you to do is at your earliest convenience, I want you to go draw out or take out an amount of money from the bank. Obviously, when the lockdown is let up and you can actually move around freely, although it's probably not a terrible time because you can go to and from the shop like this and the likelihood of being robbed is significantly less. But hey, Clive, awesome to have you on the call, buddy. Thank you for joining us. But what I want you to do is I want you to go to a bank, okay, either a bank itself or a cash machine, and go and draw out an amount of money that makes you feel uncomfortable. Okay, now I remember the first time I did this exercise, £1,000 for me was uncomfortable. I remember walking around London with Taro, and we were essentially walking around with give or take about 80K between us, just walking around into the banks and depositing. So, and I felt significantly less comfortable, or more comfortable then than when I did the exercise about 5 years prior, and had £1,000. So it's interesting how your beliefs and thoughts around money adapt. So let me just scroll down because unfortunately this doesn't auto scroll. Okay, Leeds, awesome. Glad you can join us from Leeds there, Pav. Super cool, man. So, so draw out an amount of money that makes you feel genuinely uncomfortable to carry around. Okay, now it might be as little as £100. Some people, that's fine. Okay, this is not a judgment call on what that figure is. Okay, this is an exercise to start to help you to realize what's genuinely going on in your head. Okay, so it can be anywhere from £100, anywhere up to 10 grand, whatever it is, whatever that figure is, where you go, like, I don't feel so great walking around with this money. Because what is the likelihood of you being robbed? Okay, and I asked this question because the likelihood of you being robbed once in your life is like next to nothing. Now, it does happen to people, don't get me wrong, it is an occasional thing, but in terms of percentage likelihood, you're probably more likely to be struck by lightning or not a million miles out as to being robbed. So the money is actually very safe in your pocket, unless you're like flashing it and showing it to people going, hey, look, I've got 20 grand here. Okay, as long as you're sensible about it, stick it in a bag, stick it in your pocket, stick it inside your jacket, whatever it is, and just be sensible. And while you're walking around with this amount of money in your pocket, and while you're busy sort of just carrying about your day, notice the thoughts going through your head. Whether it's skepticism of other people, whether it's paranoia that other people are going to rob you, whatever the thoughts and feeling is. Okay, when you get back home, make a note of all of those feelings, or make a note on your phone. You've got notes on your phone, and start to jot all of that down, because that starts to show you your genuine beliefs around money. Okay, the idea of us working together and what I'm trying to do here and what I try and do in all these calls and our mentorship groups, masterminds, etc., is to get you to a point where you don't feel uncomfortable with that amount. You feel uncomfortable with a significantly larger amount. Okay, and everything like before that becomes, that's okay, because I know if anything goes wrong, I can always figure it out, the likelihood, etc., etc. So, so that's the primary exercise in which I want you to do, just to start to become aware of where you're at. Okay, that's the easiest way that I can help you do that from a distance without being live in a training room with you guys, as is my usual standard of doing. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to follow a sequence of steps. Okay, so the very first step I want you to do that will help you increase your money, I suppose financial acumen, financial comfort, whatever you want to call it, is I want you to start to get comfortable talking about money. Now, it's really interesting because it's one of those subjects, so like money and sex, things that we all have in common, okay, yet are taboo. People don't talk about it, which is fascinating because we all need money and we all pretty much have sex at some point. So it all forms part of who we are as human beings. And yet there's this fear and concern about talking about it. Now, sex I kind of understand because it's a little bit private in terms of physical, right? We hide ourselves as being modest. But when it comes to money, why do you not talk about it? Okay. Now you might say, look, I talk about it, it's fine, it's part of our discussion, but the vast majority of people, and this may or may not be you, and it's okay if it is, right? This forms part of the learning. Why are you not comfortable talking about it? And it's interesting because it actually has nothing to do with the money. It has everything to do with the fear of being judged. Okay, if I talk about money, they're going to think I'm greedy, or they're going to think this, or they're going to think that. Bullshit. I tell you now, it's bullshit. People don't care. Okay, people do not care. If you start to allow yourself to be more comfortable talking about money, more comfortable discussing what's going on in life, what you'll find is, firstly, you get a lot more people around you who genuinely care and want to be with you and spend time with you and help you. Okay, and secondly, anytime shit goes wrong, okay, you've got people there. And thirdly, and actually probably the biggest one for me, is what you start to do is you start to teach those around you and those who are younger than you and those that are learning from you, kids, nephews, nieces, whatever, how to become more comfortable with money and the conversation around money. Because you'll tend to find the vast majority of people, they dig themselves a hole, but they don't tell anyone. Okay, because, I don't want anyone to know that I'm in shit because they'll judge me and blah, blah, blah. Whereas if they'd have had those conversations right at the get-go, they probably would never have been in that position. So help people get more comfortable talking around money, and the easiest way for you to do that is you start to talk about money. Okay, and just get comfortable with it. Talk about it with your circle, your family, your friends. I talk about money at home all the time in front of the kids, everything. And it's not because I love money or I'm infatuated. It's just because money forms part of our lives. Why should we not discuss it? Okay, it's a simple question. And if you're sitting there rebelling this, going, yeah, but it shouldn't. But why? Why? Pull that apart. Is that really a genuine, fair belief, and does it serve you? Okay. The second thing I want you guys to do is I want you to listen. I've got it written down here. So listen to what you say when you talk about money. So while you're having this dialogue and conversation about money, which hopefully you'll be doing a lot more of, listen to what you say. Okay. Are you saying, oh man, I find it really hard to make money, or, money eludes me, or, money's amazing. Like, it's really helped us out. What are you saying about money? Okay. And start to, even when you're doing things in jest, when you're having a laugh with friends and it just sort of comes out, oh, I'm supposed to talk about money, and I don't really like talking about money. That's a point. Like, you've just given a belief. You've just listed out something that gives you a bit of an insight to your genuine feelings and beliefs. So what I want you to do is, while you're busy going through these, anytime you say something about money where you go, oh, that doesn't sound like it's beneficial, make a note of it. Okay, write them down. Start to review them on a fairly regular basis whenever they come out. Now, it's interesting because for some of you, you're going to go, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. Why? Why? It's the same thing. You are preventing yourself from having to face up to something that you don't necessarily like, okay, which is really interesting. So list down all of those negative beliefs. So that's the next thing. And then the fourth and final thing I want you to do, which is I want you to take some time and reflect over those. So probably once a week or once a month, just take a look at that list that you've created. I'd suggest just do this for a week. Just do this for 7 days. List everything for 7 days. Okay. Then at the end of the 7 days, review that list. Okay. And everything on that list, and I mean everything, just ask yourself the question, does it serve me? Okay. Does it serve me to have this belief or this feeling or this thought? Does it serve me? Okay. And if the answer is no, it's then, okay, what can I do differently? What can I say that will then reinforce a more positive belief around this? Okay, and that's where things start to get interesting. That's where you start to notice changes. That's where you start to deal with the real skeletons in the closet, or the elephant in the room, or whatever you want to call it. Is you have to start to take a look at your genuine financial position and go, okay, well, I'm not where I want to be, and I've got all these negative beliefs, and this is probably from this person or that person or whatever. Do these serve me? Are they genuine? Are they real? Is it something I should really believe, or is it just something I'm saying because it's something I've learned and that's my immediate response to dealing with it? So in terms of next steps, I mean, that's kind of the steps that I'd highly suggest you guys need to do. So obviously, we're sort of coming into the Q&A section. So if you've got any questions, now's the time to be popping them in chat box. I'll make sure I answer them. And any question whatsoever, it could be about money, it could be about property, it could be about whatever you want. Okay, this is like your live free mentorship moment. So ask whatever questions you want. I'm more than happy to answer whatever it is. I'm here for you. This is your time. It's not mine. I'm fine. I'm at home on lockdown. My kids are in bed. I'm going to go downstairs, have a drink with my wife in a little bit, sit down, watch a movie or whatever. So please make sure you ask any questions you have there. This is the perfect time for you to capitalize on my time and my knowledge, my insights. So what we've covered today is we've covered the 3 reasons why your bank account isn't where you want it to be. Number one of those reasons, very simply, is an internal belief, okay? An internal belief around your value or your worth. And this is a very common thing. Okay, number 2, very simply, was a fear or a disrespect or a disliking or disdain or whatever you want to call it of money, where you go, oh, I don't like money, I don't need that stuff in my life, whatever it is. Okay, that is a negative belief. Okay, that is the second one. And the third one is an imprinted belief that comes from one of your parents or one of your guardians or somebody who raised you throughout your young years, an imprinted belief from them which doesn't serve you. Okay, it doesn't serve you. And that's the point that I'm trying to get across, is that's what you need to start to take a look at and see how you can rectify that. In terms of your exercises, I wanted you guys to draw out a little bit of cash, the amount that makes you feel very uncomfortable. Okay, we got a couple of questions come through that makes you feel very uncomfortable, and actually carry that around with you and just see what happens. See your beliefs, see your thoughts, see what you're thinking. Okay, make a note of it. Okay, because those beliefs do not serve you. Okay, write it down. Now you might go, yeah, but I don't feel uncomfortable with any amount of money. Bullshit. Okay, bullshit. I don't care who you are. You can be Richard Branson. He might need like 100 million in his pocket to feel uncomfortable, but everyone has this at some point. The point is, where is it, and what are the feelings and thoughts around it? Okay, and how do you combat those? Then in terms of your steps, it's make sure you're getting comfortable talking about money. Okay, and this is around your friends or family. Listen to what you say when you're talking about money, negative and positive things that you're saying, even in jest. List them down, okay, for 7 days, write them all down so you have a list of it. Okay, and then and then the fourth one is at the end of your 7 days is reflect upon those and see whether they serve you or not. And if they do not serve you, see what you can do or how you can try and change them or what line you can use instead that will reaffirm a positive belief as opposed to a negative belief around money. Okay, so had a lovely question which is what characteristics or traits do you believe successful people have in common where money is concerned? So really, really good question. And I absolutely love that question. So the common traits that I tend to find people have when it comes to being successful around when it comes to money, the common trait is there's a couple. Okay, so one is being willing to take a bit of a risk. Okay, when things going a bit rough or you're not 100% sure what to do, being willing to step out of your comfort zone and say, well, I'm going to give it a go because it's a calculated effort. It's not a gamble. It's a calculated effort. And I'm going to be willing to take a little bit of a risk because I've looked at this logically and said, okay, logically, this all makes sense. Okay, and it's fine. Now, there's a small risk of me having issues, but I know I could then recoup and deal with that in the future. So that's the first thing. The second one, which is probably my favorite, and it's I'd probably put it as one of my biggest keys to success in what we've achieved to date. I remember having a conversation with my business coach, and I said to him, I said, look, what is your biggest secret to success? Like, what's it? What is your biggest secret? And he said to me, he says, very simply, it is speed of implementation. Okay, and that is it. He says, speed of implementation. I says, well, explain it. What do you mean? He says, well, I like all the time I go to my mentor or coach, and just so we're clear, like everybody who's hugely successful has a mentor or coach. Think of any sports professionals, Richard Branson, like all of these people, they all have mentors and coaches, every single one of them. He always says to me, he says, anytime I go to my business coach, and I'd say to him, okay, what do you want me to do now? And he'd say, I want you to do this, and I'd just go do it. So I wouldn't think about it. I wouldn't sit there and get emotional about it. I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't do any of that stuff. He says, and it didn't always work because it's not going to, okay? Because things vary people to people, situation to situation. He says, but most of the time it worked, and when it worked really well. And when it didn't work, it was like, okay, next, what do I do next? So that's probably one of the biggest ones. And the third one is the ability to, anytime things are not working in your favor, instead of blaming, instead of pointing the finger, instead of, oh, it's that person's fault, or it's this thing's fault, or whatever, is to take full responsibility and say, okay, great. So I probably should have looked at this differently. I should have probably taken a different approach. What can I learn from this to prevent me going through this again? Okay, it's taking responsibility. And it's interestingly enough, it's one of the biggest keys we look for on anybody we mentor now after some very interesting experiences with people who refuse to acknowledge the fact that they might not have done things correctly back from the very early days. And it's one of the biggest keys we look for because I know they are hard to coach. Whereas if you're willing to take responsibility, I know I can coach you to massive success significantly faster. So those are the three characteristics that I find are of major use to or are some of the biggest keys to being financially successful through my experience through life and certainly through a lot of dialogue with a lot of very, very wealthy and successful people. Okay, next question. Pab, I find my bank account fluctuates between 10K to 30K, down to minus 5K when doing a deal. What do you recommend to stabilize this behavior? Okay, so your set point will probably be somewhere around 20K, just so you know, Pav. And if you think of how a thermostat works, which is brilliant. So how a thermostat tends to work is you set the thermostat to a certain temperature, and when it's below that temperature, the heating comes blasting on, full heat, and then it goes over the temperature. Okay, and then it turns off, and then it kicks below the temperature. Okay, and it never just sits at the right temperature. It's always doing this backwards and forwards thing. Okay, it's a mass fluctuation. Now, it just depends on how alert it is to what's going on and how fast it reacts to making that happen. Now, in terms of what you're doing between 10 and 30, okay, that is a very large fluctuation, and that'll be because you're pushing things very hard or taking things very easy. Now, my biggest suggestion to you in terms of how you can create a bit more stability is put away some of that money in a place that you don't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it, you can't do anything. Okay, this is one of the best tricks I understand and I know is you just say, okay, well, let me just stick 10K over there. And then you're still comfortable with 10K in your bank account because you put that other stuff out of your mind. but in reality, you've got 20K and you're going down from 20 up to 40 as opposed to 10 up to 30. Okay, so that then gives you a bit more comfort there in terms of how much you actually have in savings. Taro, my business partner, this Japanese chap over here, I don't think you can see on the film. No, you can't. So Taro, he basically had like 5 or 6 different bank accounts where he had money squirreled away for a rainy day, which is interesting because it was always a fascinating dialogue and belief and thinking with him. So that's one way in which you can do it. The other thing you can do is start to change when you respond to things. So instead of you going, oh shit, let me deal with something now, I've got 30K, let me just go and spend this and get this done. Okay, is when you got 25 in the bank, go, okay, you know, I know I'm going to have a little bit of money. Let me put some aside and save up for whatever I want to buy, but make sure that I keep myself 20 in reserve. Okay, and then likewise, whenever you go, okay, I'm down to 15, I really need to do what I need to do to sort this out really quickly. Because I need to make sure I maintain 20 and almost create a new understanding and belief that you need to ensure that you have 20 in the bank account at any one time. Now, when it comes to you buying a deal and that going down significantly, so that's okay. My suggestion with that is try and make sure you keep at least 5K reserve just for a rainy day, because when shit happens, it's always the little stuff as well, you know, like the car breaks, you know, or, you know, your bike breaks, or you know, something happens at home, your boiler, or whatever it is, something breaks, and it's typically 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 is plenty to be able to deal with that. So just make sure you keep aside maybe a 5K rainy day fund, and that's where the 10K in a separate account can come in very, very handy. Okay, but hopefully that helps you there, Pav. Okay, so one sec. Sorry, my emails just popped up and it obscured the view, so I wasn't sure if I was still live. Okay, next, do you find you need to keep repeating good habits to keep them ingrained, or after a time does it stick with you? So the answer is 16 weeks. Okay, 16 weeks is the answer. I believe it's 16 weeks, or it might be 6 weeks. So in terms of how long it takes to build a habit, I think it's 6 weeks, actually. 6 weeks to create a habit. If you do something daily for 6 weeks, by the end of 6 weeks, you've created a new habit for yourself. So if you consider how the brain works, and I love the question, by the way, Clive, and hopefully that helped you as well, by the way, Pav, really good question, thank you. But if you think of how the brain works, the brain is basically a whole bunch of neurons, okay, and it's a whole bunch of electrical signals shooting all over the place like crazy. Whenever you decide to do something, you make a conscious choice, okay, what happens is 2 neural connections, you'll have an electric spark shoot from one end to the other. And I actually got this from our mindset coach, Michelle Masters, who does all the money mindset for me and for Taro, and sort of comes and teaches for our mentorship students as well. She's amazing. And I'm sure she won't mind me sharing this, because anything that helps people mentally is useful. And yeah, so basically you'll create an electrical spark that goes from a transmitter and goes to a receiver part of your brain, which then shoots down your spinal column or whatever and creates the movement it needs to move. Every single time you do that, what ends up happening is these get closer and closer as they get longer and longer. And eventually they connect. Okay, and this is the term would be a neural pathway. It's one of the terms I'm sure it's been called, or a neural connection. What you tend to find happens at that point is this becomes an automatic response. So if you think while you're driving a car, the very first time you ever drove a car, what was it like? Okay, what was it like? And it's all clunky. Oh shit, it's the clutch and the gearbox, and it's the mirrors, and it was a lot going on. Now, if you think when you're driving, you can quite comfortably. I'm not saying you should. Okay, I'm not saying you should, but I'm sure many of you do. Message pops up, you check the message on your phone, you watch again, you sort the radio out, you watch again. Oh, I just got this thing over here. Yep, I can take my jumper off. Whatever it is that you do that you shouldn't do while driving, and you shouldn't do it, but you do it, and we all do it. Okay, whatever it is that you do, there's no way you should be able to do that if you had to consciously think about driving. That's where it gets really interesting. So over a period of 6 weeks of repetition, okay, you create that as a good habit. So in terms of an answer to your question, Clive, if you continually do something for 6 weeks, it becomes an ingrained habit. As an example, if you go to the gym every morning, by the time you get up to 6 weeks, you're just up in the morning, you go to the gym. It's no longer I've got to get up and go to the gym. Like, that's all gone. You just get up, you go. Okay, nice and simple. Get up and go. So hopefully that answers your question, Clive. Really, really good question. Thank you for asking it. Okay, then David Young. What do you recommend with saving money and using personal money on deals? Would you keep saving or use most of it to invest? Really good question, David. Hi, by the way, thank you for joining. Really good question. So it kind of depends a little bit on how you want to do things. So in terms of savings, I would typically say when it comes to investing, you're going to want to use personal money, but you always want to leverage the banks, okay, primarily because you can buy more deals with the same money, okay? Very simply, you can get a lot more return, a lot more equitable value, a lot more cash flow. You can get a lot more value, a lot more bang for your buck because the bank takes a percentage of the risk, very large percentage actually. So in terms of what I tend to do when it comes to investing is I try and use the cheapest money I have available for every deal. Okay. Now, in terms of the cheapest money, your money is going to be the cheapest money, always. So personal savings will always be the cheapest money. Now, you might not make interest from your bank, which is 1% a year, but you should be returning significantly higher. The next most inexpensive money is typically friends and family, if they just lend you money at no cost or a very low interest. Then you've got credit cards. Now, I understand you can do credit cards with 0% interest, but you've got transfer fees and all that good stuff. You've got bank loans, you've got mortgages, equity release. You're moving up the cost of money. But for me, my belief is always try and use the least expensive money possible at the beginning and always leverage the bank. Okay, I mean, always leverage the bank. Now, it's obviously your choice. That's just my belief. But yeah, hopefully that sort of answers your question. If not, please, you guys are welcome to ask a follow-up question. I'm more than happy to answer, just because I want to make sure that I get your answer, like your question completely answered exactly. So you should think, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm happy with that. Okay, so yeah, so in terms of my preference, saving and using personal money, I would always use personal money. I wouldn't, like, savings very useful, but it's very useful so you can save that money to invest. If you consider just for a second, David, how much money are you getting in the bank? What is the bank giving you in terms of interest and return? Okay, and this is where it starts to break down the beliefs and thinking. Now, it might give you an internal security. You're like, okay, yeah, but I've got some money there. I'm really good. I've got 40 or 50 grand. I'm really happy. Okay, how much money do you really need to cover your ass in case things go wrong? That's what you need to have aside. The rest of it, if you get it out there working for you, get those little buggers working for you, get it invested in property, get it invested as an investor, get it invested in yourself. I mean, the most valuable investment you have is in your education, your knowledge, and your understanding, because nobody can take that away from you. Like if the market turns and all hell breaks loose and, the Queen decides she wants to take your property, she can take whatever she wants, right? Extremely unlikely, but the point is things are possible. They can't take your knowledge. They just can't. So investing in yourself is probably your most valuable investment, but you want to invest in yourself in a way that you're going to get a valuable return for that money over a long period of time. So yeah, so me personally, I'll save up. I'll make sure I've got enough that covers my ass, and the rest of it, that just gets invested as much as possible, because that really helps me move along, helps us build a portfolio. I mean, we've bought and sold millions in property in the past few years, and it's fared us very well. So that would be my suggestion in terms of how you do it. But yeah, really solid question. Thank you very much, David. Okay, is there any more questions before I sort of wrap up the call? We've been going at it for 50 minutes. I'm not going to lie, my office is very, very warm. Unfortunately, I have the door closed because I have 3 young kids, 2 of which are in bed and 1 is downstairs running amok with my wife because she's one and crazy. Yeah, so the office is very warm. But yes, so any other questions? If you've got no other questions, please just drop a note in the chat box just so I know I don't end up cutting you off. If you've got a question, just drop a Q in the chat box again so I don't end up cutting you off. But please understand, if you're catching this as a recording, feel free to ask any questions you have directly in the chat box, the comments box, wherever you're at. Even on YouTube, either me or one of the team will be monitoring it. We'll be offering whatever answers we can offer to be able to give you guys some answers, so you know how you can continue to move forward in your journey. Just as a quick side note, for those of you that are interested in what I have to say and some of the stuff that we're learning here, we actually do a deep dive on all of this stuff, as well as property investing, all of your steps, what you need to do, how to build a portfolio, etc. We do a deep dive 3-day on that, which we do on a live stream. We're going to be running in about 3 weeks' time. Which is 3.5 weeks, the 8th to 10th of May, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're doing it for £97 for 3 full days of training, which is, it's nothing. It's basically to keep the lights on, keep us sort of turning up, keep the cost of marketing and all that kind of stuff going. So if you're interested in doing any of that, all you got to do is just drop a message. We'll send you the link. You can get yourself all registered and booked in. I hope to see you at the 3-day trainings. If not, either which way, I'm going to be on next week, exactly the same time, 8 p.m. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you guys. I hope you have an amazing week. I hope you're all staying safe, keeping away from the dreaded COVID-19. And I look forward to catching up with you guys in a week. Hope you have an amazing day. And thank you. See ya. Bye.